Hello, friends. Welcome back. So I'm continuing to talk about the scapegoat in narcissistic family dynamics. The last video I did, I talked about how narcissistic parents set up the scapegoat to not be believed. And so I was thinking about how important it is to understand that just because you come from a narcissistic family dynamics, narcissistic family system where you were forced into the role as a scapegoat, doesn't mean once a scapegoat, always a scapegoat. There's literally so much information out there about how narcissistic parents make you a scapegoat, what the scapegoat is like, what they have to endure, what they go through. Well, I want to talk about what you can do to stop being the scapegoat. And I was inspired to make this video in response to a comment that somebody put on my video that I put up yesterday. So there's the video if you haven't seen that in reference to how parents set you up to be the scapegoat. And I'm going to read the comment and we'll dive right into those tips on how to stop being the scapegoat. But before I do so, I do want to let you know that if you are watching video after video and you're learning and learning and learning and you still feel stuck, make sure you check out my website. I'll leave a link to my website here. I have resources that are designed to help you to experience the inner shifts that you really want. And there are also resources for people that have done a lot of inner work and are now ready to help others as trauma-informed narcissistic abuse life coaches. So that being said, let's get into that comment. And since I'm blind, got to put my glasses on. Let's read it. So first, shout out to Susan. She's the one that left this comment. And she put, so Michele, what are the concise statements of truth which don't collude with their scapegoating, but don't accuse them of anything? A few times I have said my parents will talk about me, but not to me, which is true. There's so much more I want to say. I want to say that my mother projects onto me when I ask her not to, or I'm sensitive. When she shuts me down and won't hear me, I'm angry. And when I stand firm in my own interpretation of events, I'm mad and entitled and abusive and insane. I've given up now. Every single time I try, I get insulted again, so I've stopped trying. Okay, so you asked about statements that help. Now, obviously, having some memorized statements, right, under your belt is helpful, because when narcissists accuse you of something, or flying monkeys, or people that don't understand, when they accuse you of something that's not true, it's a trigger. And once we get those emotions, coming up, it's really hard to think logically. So having those memorized statements is helpful. However, the tips I'm going to give you are not just about memorizing statements, because really to work through these kinds of dynamics with individuals that are always triggering you, with people that are refusing to see your truth, more than statements is needed. It's really a shift in mindset. Okay, so tip number one, if you want to stop being the scapegoat, it's not about getting the narcissist to stop seeing you as the scapegoat. In fact, it's not even about I'm stuttering. It's not even about getting the narcissist to change how they see you. The way you stop being the scapegoat is when you break free of identifying with that. And the first thought can be, well, I don't. Okay, because I know that's how I was. As soon as somebody said that, I was like, are you kidding? Of course I don't. They're the ones that are making this happen. And then I started to realize, well, if I really believed my own truth, and if I really realized this mentality that in reality, I can separate my identity from how they see me, when they accuse me and they say, Michele, you're insane, or you're so sensitive, the evidence of not identifying with that is when we don't explain it. We're not like, no, because this happened and that happened and I need to prove to you. The second we're trying to prove it to someone else, we ourselves are not standing in our own truth. And there's no shame in that, because narcissists teach you that. They teach you you're not allowed to be in your own truth. So anyone that has undergone narcissistic abuse struggles with this mindset. It's something that has to be learned, because in the past, in childhood, if you tried to stay in your truth, you were punished and shamed. So through the years, it just becomes habit to think that you need them to agree with you. But reversing it is now realizing you don't. The way you stop being the scapegoat is when you don't identify with it. So think about that. For example, if somebody told me, Michele, oh my God, you have 3 nostrils. Like, you have 3 nostrils. Okay, that's silly and it's not in any way painful. So I'm not really going to give it much emotional charge, right? But I'm also not going to waste time trying to explain it and trying to prove it and taking a picture and putting it in front of them to try to prove it, as if I need them to say, oh, that's true, you only have 2, in order to believe it. No. But let's talk about when the accusation really touches a nerve. So I'm a mom, and you guys know, us mama bears, we love our kids, we love our cubs, right? And we love being the best parent we can be, especially if we didn't have good parents. It means a lot to us to be a good parent. So let's say somebody comes around and says, Michele, you're not a good parent. You've ruined your kids. You're damaging your kids because of your damage. Ooh, now that's a whole different thing than 2 nostrils, right? But if I know who I am, and if I have a clear analysis of the fact that maybe I'm not perfect and maybe I make mistakes, but I'm still a good parent that has good intentions and that is trying my best. When the person says that to me, it might sting because, hello, we are human. Doesn't matter how many tools you learn how to deal with toxic people, you're still human, and rude and hurtful behavior is going to hurt. You're going to feel it. But it doesn't mean you have to be triggered to a place that feels awful inside. So in other words, I can acknowledge that that hurts, but I reaffirm from within who I am. Don't explain it. I don't try to prove it. I just allow there to be 2 perceptions. And by the way, that is how we break out of toxic or narcissistic patterns. The narcissist, this is going into step 2, by the way, or tip number 2. The narcissist sees everything as the same. My perception, your perception cannot be different. They must always be the same. And any victim of narcissistic abuse hates that, right? You're never allowed to have your truth or your reality. Well, without realizing it, we can sometimes act like that when we don't allow the narcissist to have their ugly views. We don't like them. I'm not saying we have to agree with them, but they're allowed to see us how they want, and we're allowed to see ourselves how we want. We let go of controlling their perception of us. It's about standing in your truth and saying, if that's how you see it, that sucks, but that's your choice. If that's how you want to view me, I disagree, but let's agree to disagree. So it's about allowing there to be 2 perspectives on your end as well. In childhood, we view our perception and our parents' perception like that, and that's normal, right? But when we become adults, we have to teach ourselves to change that, because we can't live with our perception down here and a parent's perception up here if this parent is unhealthy. We have to raise our perception of ourselves to see it in a healthy light. Okay. And again, that doesn't mean that they're going to change, but you change. You see yourself differently. And one of the things that helps you to get to that place where you can allow those 2 perceptions to exist is when you begin validating yourself. So for example, the narcissist is like, oh, you're so sensitive. You're just angry. Meanwhile, you know, it's completely normal to be upset if somebody insults you, right? But they're trying to make your reaction a problem. The way you handle that is by validating what's going on inside of you. So it might sound like, okay, they're saying that I'm angry and I'm upset, but of course my feelings are normal. Anyone that's insulted is going to feel hurt. It's a normal reaction. I'm allowed to feel my feelings, but you're saying this to you, not to them. And at that moment that you're validating yourself, you're giving you're giving your feelings what they need. Your feelings need to be seen. Your feelings need to be heard and cared about. The problem is that victims of narcissistic abuse normally chase the narcissist to get those things, to try to get the narcissist to see your feelings, to try to get the narcissist to care about what you've gone through, and you're just chasing and chasing and chasing and not getting anywhere. When you can validate yourself, it's easier to allow that perspective because now you're not being deprived of what you need. Now, tip number 3 are the statements that you talked about. What are the statements I can say? You have to have those first 2 tips in practice, or you have to polish those first 2 tips in order to say these statements and to feel grounded, right? Because if you don't do tip number 1 and tip number 2, and you just try to use these statements, you'll find yourself very triggered. And when we are triggered, we do not think clearly, we do not handle things with logic and from a place of being grounded. Okay, but some of the statements that you can say, that's your opinion. I choose to see things differently. I hear you. I agree to disagree. I prefer to not engage in this conversation. Okay, so you've said a statement, and each one of those statements does 2 things. It respects the perspective of the other person. They're allowed to have it, and it respects your own. That's why they're so powerful. If you find it difficult to do those first 3 steps without being really triggered, without feeling emotionally dysregulated, without flying off the handle into one of your trauma responses, whether they're fight, flight, freeze, or fawn, then the next tip would be about peeling back what that trigger means. A trigger is an opportunity. A trigger is your body's way of saying, this is unhealed and it's wounded and it's hurting and it needs attention. And so the healing and the recovery with narcissistic abuse isn't just what we do here on the outside with the narcissist. It's about clearing up what's going on inside. And usually a trigger is because there is a trauma belief still active in your body. A trauma belief is a belief that you were made to feel about yourself. Somehow, whatever they're doing is on an unconscious level, causing you to think something negative and limiting about yourself. And that's what's causing this emotional reaction, this triggered state. So I know that's a lot of information, but those are some tips that help you, because the only one that's going to stop you from being the scapegoat in your adult life is you. And you don't need the narcissist to see you differently. You don't need them to change. When you change and you are showing up differently with them and with yourself, you will feel the difference and you won't feel like a scapegoat anymore. I hope this helps. And in reference to how to overcome emotional flashbacks, in the month of September, we are going to take the whole month in the Thriver School of Transformation, and we are going to learn how to identify our triggers, how to peel them back, how to heal them, so that we can handle things, feeling our emotions, but without our emotions becoming so dysregulated that it feels awful. So if you're interested, make sure you check out the link for the Thriver School of Transformation.